I just finished watching the anime Dungeon Meshi. It's on Netflix, also known as Delicious in Dungeon. And I do want to give you a fair warning here. There will be spoilers. I just want to let you know that ahead of time. So if you have not yet watched the anime, go ahead and do that, then come back to this video because I want to talk about it. So in the beginning, we see there's a party. Three, four, five, six party members. Fallon, unfortunately, is eaten by a dragon, and then we get Chilchuck, Marcel, Laios, and those are the three who are left. And the other two members of the party leave. I can't quite remember their names because I didn't get really invested in them. Then we have Senshi there. Senshi is a man who has been in the dungeon for over a decade. A dungeon that's only been attached to town for 6 years, but he's been in over a decade because he had found it when he was with a group of dwarves, which is really cool. And the fact that it takes until the 23rd of 24 episodes to actually find that out is pretty amazing. That they made that happen. I thought that was a really cool thing, really cool setup. Now, overall, I thought it was a really cool concept that you would be eating monsters in a dungeon so that you could actually continue and go because you have a goal. Your goal is to rescue Fallon, a member of your party. Now, Marcel is, of course, the lesbian lover of Fallon. That's implied. Then her brother Laos is there, and then Chilchuck is there because he'd been obviously a member of the party and he'd been paid, so he stays. And then Senshi joins because he's like, you could just eat monsters, and I like cooking monsters. And I thought that was really cool. Senshi is voiced by ProZD, a YouTuber and voice actor who I think is absolutely amazing. When I was listening to his voice in the show, I was like, I recognize this from somewhere. I recognize this from somewhere. And I was like, oh, that's ProZD. Oh, that's ProZD. And I was like, that's really cool. I actually had to look it up. And that's when I realized that it was him. I was like, that is sweet. Overall, the arc ends about halfway through the manga. There's 50-ish chapters covered, maybe 52 chapters covered, and then there's another about 40 chapters of manga. Goes up to I think 97, 90, technically 99 and 100 if you count the prologue and the 97.1, 2, and 3. So that's actually 101 chapters. The Red Dragon is my favorite monster by far because I love dragons in my Dungeons and Dragons setting. Um, I'm actually DMing a game this upcoming, well, semester in September where I'm planning on using Dungeons and Dragons in my Dungeons and Dragons session. I'm building it up. There's a few things that I have to work on with the story. That's something that I've been working on every weekend. And I think dragons are really cool. The way they fought the Red Dragon, though, was epic. And the reason I say that is because the Red Dragon is a very powerful enemy that has one. Generally, dragons have one weak spot, and that weak spot is their underbelly or like a weak scale. But they utilize the fuel organ to burn out its fuel because that's a weak spot. I had never actually thought that, oh, dragons have fuel. I'd never thought about that. They use dark magic to resurrect Fallon, and unfortunately, that ends up somehow leading to her merging with the Red Dragon, and it gets really weird. I'm not 100% sure on that, how that happened, but they're going to look for her and try to rescue her in something that I think is very noble and I think is very good. Overall, there were a lot of monsters in there that I thought fought in a different way, but each time where it was you would fight a monster and you would advance towards your goal, but then you would stop and you would actually sit down and cook a meal. And each time that happened, I thought that was really cool because it allowed for exploration of the interpersonal relationships between each of the characters. It allowed us to see how each of the characters would react to the fact that they had to eat monsters. I was talking to a friend today, and they said that Laos has autism about monsters. And yeah, yeah, Laos has autism about monsters. Overall, the interpersonal relationships in this do push some of the storytelling, but much of the storytelling is about advancing to the goal, with the eating of the dungeon food just being simply a way to drive towards the goal, because each time you advance towards your goal a little bit closer, you end up having a monster that's either more difficult to defeat or has more difficulty actually getting into. Like you start with just a walking mushroom, which you just sort of stab, and then by the end you're fighting a griffin. And because of that, you're like, oh yeah, you can see kind of how it's more dangerous, more difficult. Obviously, I think the dragon's more difficult than the griffin, but the dragon was not intentionally. The dragon was originally their goal, was to defeat the dragon and rescue Fallon. And fortunately, they were able to sort of do that. And then what's really cool and what I'm really looking forward to in the second season is what happens with the Golden Castle and the residents of the Golden Castle, because I think that will be an absolutely amazing arc. But I really thought that the use of monsters that are more difficult to defeat and then cooking them as a way to move the narrative forward was very impressive. Because you hear delicious in dungeon and you're just like, oh, it's a book about cooking or a show about cooking, and you're like, and then you read it or you engage with it and you're like, oh no, this is a really cool actual narrative story where it or frame narrative where the frame narrative is eating the monsters, but the actual story is rescuing Fallon, figuring out the interpersonal relationships, figuring out how to actually fix the thing with the castle, um, figuring out how to release people from their immortality. That's not really been touched on. I think my favorite line in the entire series was Len Leaus said, "They let me milk a minotaur," because what? But they let him milk a minotaur, and I thought that was awesome. I thought that was one of the most awesome lines in the series, and I want to actually say thank you for not showing that to the studio, because what? And that's the Golden Castle residents actually are having their food eaten. They raise monsters and they eat them. They don't have much of a much of an appetite, which I suppose when you've been alive for 1,000 years, you're not going to have much of an appetite. But overall, I'd give this probably an 8.5 out of 10. The animation was really good. I was super into the animation. I thought it was really cool. Definitely a little bit more of a Dungeons and Dragons feel to it than a straight up just shonen anime feel to it, because there's not as much fighting. And I don't know if I've ever told you guys this, but like basically my favorite types of anime are shonen animes like Naruto and Jujutsu Kaisen and Yu-Gi-Oh, which is not actually technically a fighting anime, but it is, and it's also a Shonen Jump anime. Long story. Um, Pokemon too, I guess. But I thought the animation was really good. I thought the storytelling was really good. I thought that there were a few things that could have been improved. One of them was maybe not showing Senshi vomiting. But that's just a personal thing, but I am deducting a little bit from there. I'm also deducting like a little bit from the fact that there was a lot of focusing on the food as opposed to the actual storytelling and the fights. It felt like even with the more difficult fights, the time spent didn't really increase by much. Like it felt like the mushroom and then the dryad and then all of it. It almost felt like if you look at the titles of Dungeon Meshi, each episode will say like episode 1 X and Y. Like the last episode I think is titled Dumpling 2 and then Eggs and Bacon, and like there's not really a lot of a fight in that episode, which this is not a criticism of that episode at all. But this is just a point to point out that like each episode's kind of split into two like 11.5 minute segments, and because of that, it feels a lot like honestly, it feels a lot like a PBS kids show, a lot like Arthur or something of that nature, where it's 11.5 minutes, and then you go 11.5 minutes into a second part of the story. And yes, the story is connected here, so it's a little bit better than Arthur, which is a PBS kids show about like life and stuff, by Mark Brown. But that like 11, there are some episodes that felt like they could have had a full 22 or 24 minute treatment. It didn't overall ruin the anime. It didn't ruin the show in any way at all. But what I can say is like honestly, I wanted more. So when you want more, I think that's good. And I can't wait for the second season to come out because I think this is one of the better animes I've watched recently. I'm in the middle of watching Jujutsu Kaisen, so look out for that review. Also, I ran a convention over the uh, spring semester, and a very cool thing happened where one of the voice actors was actually one of our guests, and that voice actor is Laura Stahl, um, who plays, uh, what is the cat girl's name? Oh, Izutsumi, who plays Izutsumi in the show, and meeting her was awesome. I actually met her partner, Koi, as well, and the two of them are actually very awesome people. The third paid anime voice actor guest was David Vincent. Jujutsu Kaisen's a really good show, too. All three of them were amazing, but being able to actually watch an anime where I've met and interacted with the voice actors was really cool. This is basically the first or second, well, basically this and JJK are the first animes where I've ever gotten to do that, and I think that was awesome, and I'm hoping to do that more. There are a lot of voice actors I like, a lot of actors I like, and I think it's really cool. But yeah, I'd give this an 8.5 out of 10. Honestly, it probably could be a 9 out of 10 if it weren't for the Senshi vomiting and me having emetophobia. So I take that with a grain of salt, but overall a really good anime, a solid B plus to A anime, and I think it did a great job.
I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch today's video, whether it was about the Mariners, sports predictions, or anything else that I have made videos about. I want to give you information about other channels where you can reach me. I'm on Patreon at Sammy5436 for $1 a month. Right now on Patreon, all that really gets you is access to Mariners recaps 12 or so hours before they are available on YouTube and TikTok. I'm also available on Instagram at Sammy54362 and at SamanthaP54361. That second one is a business account. I can be found on Cameo at Sammy5436. That is an account that I think you should definitely follow because right now cameos are $7 and they will be there for the foreseeable future because I, right now, understand that the economy is in a bit of a downturn. So if you want to support, I do appreciate that. You can also find me on TikTok at Sammy5436. I do also have 3 other YouTube channels that are linked to this channel. All of this information can be found linked in the video descriptions of every one of my videos for the most part, other than shorts. And for business inquiries, you can email me at samanthapond54361 at outlook.com. I do want to advise you that for business inquiries, they do need to be professional, and as they come through to me, I will respond to them as I see fit. Anything that you have that is business related sent to that email will be reviewed and looked at by me. I generally take a look at my emails twice a week from that email account, though there are times where it is more frequent and times where it is less frequent. I also have premium content on a battle pass that's $4.99 a month. No, $5.99 a month, and you can find that you know where with the username Sammy5436. I'm also planning on potentially doing some live streaming at Sammy5436 on YouTube, on Twitch, on some other live streaming platforms, because I think that would be a great way for me to grow. Thank you for tuning in.